Our special guest here today is Joe from measureQuick, and he's going to be talking to us about making sure to utilize data in your service calls. So, Joe, if you want to take it from here.
Excellent, Joy. Thanks for having me here, and thanks for you guys spending your time to come here. So I appreciate that. I really like the chat that happens in this environment. So I encourage all of you to please use the chat. Introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, tell us something about you. Sometimes I can't always read the chat, but I think it makes for a much more dynamic atmosphere when we really can't see or hear each other, that people are kind of chatting away in the background. Do not hesitate to ask any of your questions, especially the ones that actually pertain to measureQuick or something like that. And then I can actually try to make sure we address those either at the end or as we go or whatever it is. So anyway, again, thanks for being here. So the title was Guide for Data-Driven Maintenance During the Cooling Season. So for me, data-driven maintenance was maybe something different than other people may be thinking about what data-driven conditions are. So to me, the data was actually what's coming from your systems and what's coming from the environment and probes and that kind of stuff. So that's really my data concept. So I'm not really a utility person in terms of a lot of data that just really gets lost in transition, or so many percentage of systems are doing part of this or part of that. Anyway, that's not really how I think about data driven. I do have some amazing historical information to remind people, which is how bad systems are. I really try to stress that usually the people that are here are the ones that are already doing a great job. It's the ones that are not here that are ones that we have to go behind and actually repair their systems or make them better or try to compete, unfortunately, with their quotes that they're giving that are really driving all of our prices too low. Okay, let's see if I can go to the next slide. Here we go. Okay.
All right, guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Perfect. I don't know what
So,
it is, but the first time I join, every time my speakers don't work. So
oh,
weird.
can you hear us now?
I can.
Great. Excellent. All right. People are
I'm
chiming in,
Jen.
so it's all good. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Um, so this is my concept. You measure it and capture it, and it's really, unfortunately, not what the world is accustomed to. Quickly, my background, I'm not an HVAC technician, right? In fact, that's the reason Jim hired me for measureQuick, is that I was not. He wanted somebody who didn't know the industry, didn't really know his app, to say, come in and improve the app and improve it and go from what would be considered like the brand new technician in the field. So that's really what my role was for measureQuick. So I agreed, as long as he was willing to step up and change the app. And so far, we've both been happy with what's going on. So my background is in home performance and pressure boundaries and duct testing and things that usually HVAC contractors kind of forget about. So my line is, yeah, you show up and your clients are uncomfortable, and it's because the windows are open. You're like, oh, you should close your windows. But the reality is, windows are closed. It's just the envelope and the entire pressure boundary just leaks, and it really makes your jobs very difficult. So it really makes for doing a proper manual J and a variety of other stuff going to play, again, all back to the data that we'll be kind of be talking about. So when I was at RetroTech, I actually created the R Cloud. It's an app that does automatic testing, very similar to what you're getting out of measureQuick. And I thought the industry would be ready to adopt this kind of stuff, and utilities and others would be like, yes, let's capture that data and know that we got it directly from the device and from the gauge. And that was 12 years ago or so, and we still do not have hardly anything that's requiring direct data capture. The only thing that's really come to full circle is that ACA QI5 is now built into measureQuick, and that requires pretty much direct capture, but you can still enter stuff from a duct test, whatever. So we're still not exactly there, but I'm trying. That's my goal before I retire or before I die, is to see that some utility programs or somebody is requiring direct data, so we can no longer fudge or have other people fudge these numbers or just rewrite them, or ironically, whatever people write down, they always pass. It's just amazing. These are some of the standards that are out there from the QI5 and standard 6, 9, or 12. If you're in the ACA world, and that's great, you don't have to be to probably hear some of this stuff. But the QI5 was one that was kind of a shocker for me to find out that it required duct testing. And the amount of people that do duct testing is a fraction of a percentage. If you're out of California, hardly anybody's doing it. So the QI5 is a major challenge because of one test that actually eliminates the whole process. But the reason for these are up here is that many people got together and figured out what was the best process, what was the best standard by which all other contractors could follow the same process and achieve really great goals with making sure that the system was installed correctly or designed correctly or still is operating correctly. So these are a great process. Some of them need to be updated. I've talked to Wes and ACA about that, so we'll see where things go from there. So they also establish a minimum care. So even if you're not following ACA standards, it's easy for somebody to say, wait a minute, my system's not that great. And you're like, well, we did the best. And you're like, well, technically, you probably could get sued because there are standards out there and a level of care that actually would be considered a professional manner. And if you're not following those, you actually have some type of liability or responsibility to your clients, even though you don't care about ACA, don't even know what it is, doesn't mean that you should not be stepping up your game because that's part of the industry. So beware that these standards, you may not like them or appreciate them, but they are pushing all of us slightly to be a little better as we go. And why independent? Well, there's nothing like trying to confirm whether or not your information you have is actually, compliant or didn't just come from that company and they just kind of made up that information. The more third-party information you have, the better off you are. If your mechanic says, "Hey, your car's running great, it's good, I can hear it, it's purring," and you're like, "Oh, did you run a test on it?" Like, nah, I can just tell it's great. That doesn't really give me any third party analysis. It just tells me the opinion of this mechanic or this person servicing my vehicle. But if I actually have the analysis from their computer that they have, now I actually have this third party separate analysis from somebody's opinion. So that's really one of the concepts is what we're trying to part here in the beginning. Many people have seen the checklist manifesto, heard about it, and I'm not here to knock it in any way. What its goal was to say there are things in life that actually can be checked off. Okay, so that's part of our data challenge. We just did a nice webinar through measureQuick with Ben and a few others on why checklists are actually not the best, but there are places we'll be all focused on that there are still good for these. So checklist manifesto has saved many people's lives because hospitals adopted this. So if you're in the surgery room, if 11 sponges went into that person's body, 11 sponges got checked off that they came back out. So there are a variety of things where checklists are great, but checking off that they have blood pressure doesn't tell me anything about the blood pressure or their breathing or anything like that. Those are all direct measurements that you're coming and you have some criteria as to whether or not that's good. Blood pressure is high or low because we actually have a threshold. We actually have a guidance as what that is. So I'm going to try and relate that back into what measureQuick does and why we're different from all other apps in terms of what we're providing you and asking you to check off some things, but we're mostly after, are you measuring these things and what do they actually mean? So checklists do not give real-time picture. They are, you can say, I checked that the superheat was good, but I didn't really keep track of what it was. So whatever those conditions are that you're trying to capture, they really should be captured directly when all possible. Edward Demings is one of my kind of heroes because he actually put perspective into what people do for a living. And one of his great analysis is that, people don't fail. The process fails the person, right? So if you have somebody who's really struggling at their job, don't assume that they're just not a good worker or they're not really somebody who's stepping up to the table. Chances are there may be a process by which they were not well trained on or that they're not accepting or adopting. If you do everything you can to make sure they understand the process and they're still struggling, then maybe there's something else that you need to do. But realizing that people don't wake up every day to try and go do a bad job. They try and do the best they can. And the best they can was not providing them with a great process as to what to do and what to do next and what does it mean. They're doomed for failure. So that was some of his amazing quotes he's got. I got a few of his lines in here throughout this. So maybe some of you caught this. This was in HVACR News. I think this was about a year ago or so. And, they're kind of talking about here in the middle here, research to determine that 23% of systems tested were charged with perfect amount. That's only 23, but they're like, oh, no, it's okay. Approximately 60% of systems were within plus or minus 5%. So not that great. So the good news is that like, okay, 40% is deviates more than 10%. So they kind of spun this into a positive thing. Things aren't as bad as we thought, but this is only one study. All right. So there's many other studies that kind of went into that. One of the things that came out of the study was right now, at that time, ACA was trying to work with measureQuick to come up with new quality standards, and we did. So since this article is out, we now have ACA QI5 and actually a new ACA VEO, Verified Equipment Operation, that are two ACA standards, and you get a certificate for both of them. One requires additional testing. One is just do everything in measureQuick, and as long as it's awesome and you got a great score and everything goes well, you actually can get an ACA verified certificate based upon just the operation of the unit. This kind of hit the fan for a while there. This was actually a major study that actually showed up and was talking about at least one fault in 70 to 90% of homes. That's a lot. If you add duct leakage, which is major, it's almost 90 to 100%. And so they really focused on what was happening for these systems. And a lot of it was not just refrigerant, but airflow. Airflow was a major issue that was rarely ever addressed by contractors. So here they kind of blew up the text. You kind of could read what some of that is. And here it's 2.5 billion annually in loss of from just the faults that are happening in the HVAC system. So this isn't like, additional costs that it should have been. These are actually how much money was lost. And then there's also a loss in productivity and a variety of stuff that comes from that. Northwest Labs, PNNL, is actually all over this in terms of trying to get smart tools. We'll talk about what really is a smart tool here in a minute, but these are trying to actually be able to move us to another level of getting really accurate, immediate data that's actually able to give us decisions on what we should be doing. So it does a lot of stuff from reducing callbacks and energy savings and all that. But I'll put a caveat here in a minute as what that really means. So again, I have a whole laundry list of these surveys that have been happening. I go back to 1995 where they were literally typed on a typewriter. That go back as all these studies, and they all repeat the same information again and again and again. Some people on this call may not have been born in 1995. So this one here is talking about 20.7 terawatt of hours are wasted every year due to equipment faults. And if you work with Jim Bergman, this is what it's like to hang out with Jim. I swear to God, in a matter of minutes, he goes, okay, we were doing a session out in the west, probably California. He goes, let's convert this to water. I'm like, okay. So he figures out the Lake Mead levels and realizes that this is about 8.5 trillion gallons of water that's wasted due to faults in systems across the country. So it's not always just in the West, it's all over, but that's a lot of water that in theory is getting wasted by not having systems being fully operational. So many of you are probably familiar with, or I hope you are, that measureQuick is this application. It does a lot of great information for you. It works on Android and Apple, works on phones, tablets. It does not work on a computer. But what we do have is a backside, which is our Virtuoso MQ Cloud portal. All right. So we actually did update the name recently. I forgot that date, my slide. So it's the MQ portal that allows you to see where all of your measurements are going in terms of saving my reports, saving my pictures. I can go back in and see my profile. You can even do some of that before you go to a job. You can go to measureQuick and go to our MQ portal and set up a job to send to one of your technicians as a way to kind of eliminate some of the touch buttons that they're trying to do. So this is where your live streaming comes into play. There's a lot of great features, and this is included free. Once you set up an account and put some money into the account, then you have access to your backside ready to go. I've learned a lot from Jim about the industry and what it is, and it didn't take long to kind of confirm some of this. So everybody is fixated on the appliance. It's the box, it's the box, it's the box. Many people describe that as a concept. So first thing people are doing is are going immediately and getting out their gauges and checking refrigerant charge and making decisions, adding or subtracting refrigerant. And they're missing a whole lot of stuff. They're missing the other box that they also focus on. I see very few people measuring static pressure. It's a common question I ask. So here you go, for those of you out there. Yes, I am measuring static pressure. That's fantastic. Are you doing it with one manometer or two? That kind of confirms whether or not you're doing that. Okay, let's continue that discussion online. Are you measuring airflow? And if so, what's your method? Because there's a variety of methods that are out there. So TrueFlow Grid, using the manufacturer static pressure runs, or using a hood. A variety of stuff is out there that's considered acceptable measurements. But it's really an uncommon measurement that happens out there. So many people will do this, the supply and return temperature. We're going to show you why you need to get away from the appliance and actually measure it in the system, because what I'm getting from my real registers in the house is actually the system and how well the system's operating, not just the box. The manufacturer says measure your temperature split here and here, and you realize that that's only helping me determine that that box is operating, not the system. And of course, very few people do duct design, and let alone duct testing. So if you were to go buy a new set of tires, and the person says, yeah, I got your tires on, and we're good. I don't have actually a pressure gauge, but they look good. They don't look low. So I'm sure there's plenty of air pressure in there, and I'm sure you'll be fine. Come back if you need more pressure. I'll just put some more in randomly. That's really what's happening with ducts. People are installing ducts, swapping out systems and not evaluating their ducts, and finding out that that's one of our greatest issues and problems that we have. So the fact that we're not testing ducts was a major disappointment for me in the industry, that it's just ignored. So, I'm working with, both of the duct tester manufacturers to see if we can't change that and improve that with ACA standards as one of their requirements. Here we go. Edwards is back. So without data, you're just another person with an opinion. All right, a lot of great stuff that he's got here. So if you want to Google Edwards Demings, you're going to find this whole litany of quotes and great stuff. So you can't manage what you don't measure. All these things come into play regularly in our lives. We just kind of forget about it, or forget that actually is kind of a standard that you're doing. If you're not measuring something, how can I confirm if it's operating or working correctly? All right, that brings us to measureQuick, right? So I didn't really introduce myself as what my role is. So we're kind of vague there. We're kind of a small company. So I was a, comfort client consultant kind of person, but now I just kind of took over training. So I'm the director of training is really my new thing. So measureQuick is just an app. The app is free, right? And you can connect all of your Bluetooth tools that you probably have that's on this list for free. You can do all of the diagnostics and measurements you want for free. Yes, some of you are saying, well, you can't do a screenshot. So we are trying to see if there's some type of plan B for that kind of stuff. So we don't know yet, but right now, you're right. And we were really getting ripped off by a lot of large companies that weren't really giving us anything and just taking what we were doing and just throwing it in their CRM, which was costing them thousands of dollars a month. And then they were doing screenshots with us. So we really kind of felt that it really wasn't going to be viable for us. So that got turned off. I know people are not happy about it, but time changes all things. So anyway, not all Bluetooth devices work with measureQuick. So there's a variety of ones that we don't really work with. We talk back and forth, so it takes a lot of effort for us to actually put all this together. So here's a good analogy as to really what is measureQuick. So if I were to put these numbers on the board like I did, and I asked you to add them up, you'd probably pull out your calculator on your phone and start adding them up. But what if they started changing and they were actually dynamic and they were not consistent? So this is very similar to what you're getting out of the probes that we want to use with measureQuick. So these are the 9 probes that we require for some of our tests in order to get your score and other conditions. So if you evaluate these compared to how things are changing, and these are just a full snapshot altogether of the different pages of all of the gauges and the information you're getting. So I got 9 probes that are giving me a lot of information and extrapolating a lot of it. So some of them are direct measurements. Some of them are actually being calculated to give me a variety of a wet bulb, and a dry bulb comes directly from your measurement. So if you're able to look at all of these screens simultaneously and watch them and determine when something's fluctuating up and high, or know what the thresholds are and that kind of stuff, then you're Jim Bergman is really the reality. So those are kind of things that he thinks of all the time, and he can see this stuff in his head without actually looking at anything. So here's your smart probes. So I have 2 Testo 605Is that are giving me temperature and relative humidity. The difference is that you are only getting those numbers. So I can see on the app that I'm getting 68.1. I got 2 analog gauges right next to it, the circles here. Those are giving me the exact same information. But what does it mean? Jim Bergman preaches regularly, if you don't know what your measurement should be, why are you measuring it? So if I don't know if this temperature split is good, or if it's high or low, then I really should be struggling to measure it. People just measure stuff just because they can, and currently they just kind of write stuff down, and nobody really evaluates if it's high or low. So these are things that measureQuick does, is we actually will give you your measurements over there on the right side, your air conditions. So I can see that I still have 68 and 53 degrees. But what people don't understand is, what's your target? That's in the bottom right corner there. What's your target? What should your temperature split be? And what is your range, right? All of this comes from the specific equipment you entered in your profile. But if you don't know what your target is, and you don't know what your range is, then I'm always asking, well, is it good or bad? And then you may not know, but measureQuick will tell you. We are the only app that's giving you a calculated target in an allowable range, not just for temperature split, but for all of those gauges you saw. Every one of them has a target in allowable range. So we could tell you immediately whether or not you're doing good, great, or okay. And this is what some of the gauges look like. So I can see that whether or not I have faults, I have issues, if I'm in the green, not in the green, and all of that comes in. So if you click on the temperature split, you can see the information actually right there in the bottom right. That's what you actually get when you click on any of the gauges. Everything in measureQuick is actually a button. So you tap on it and it's going to give you information. It tells you whether it's high or low and gives you information based upon that, or if you're within range. So Jim's goal is to educate the industry. And if you're using measureQuick as an app, you'll realize that that's really our goal and what we're actually able to achieve.
Joe, sorry to butt in. Are you sharing your screen right now?
Holy cow, you're kidding me. Nope. We tested it a minute ago.
Yeah,
I was
glad-
going to ask,
realized
but I
that-
thought you weren't trying to.
Yeah, nope. Okay. God, I spent
There it is.
hours on these things. Okay, so I'm glad we
There we
now
go.
have somebody moderate. Yeah, great. Okay, hold on.
We got it now.
Yeah, we got it. We got it. It's up. It's beautiful.
No, it is. No,
Yep.
you trust me. I spent sometimes 3 hours on a slide. You're going to see the slide. Okay, I'm not. We're not messing around here. Okay, so got
I'm
it. Okay,
excited.
all right. You got this. I'll move quickly. You'd be like, oh yeah. You talked about those standards and why they're
Look
important.
at all
Okay,
your
got it.
ACA
Okay.
standards.
Yeah, so those are all there, and some of them are existing, some of them are new units. There's a variety of stuff, but they're guiding us, whether you are applying them or not. They
Right.
are behind you, and other people are watching that. So again, they are the standard of minimum. We talked about this. You could actually be accused of not doing this minimum standard of care because this is your minimum standard of care that's out there. Okay, so again, independent is what measureQuick is doing, is providing you your process as to what's really happening. And we talked about the checklist manifesto and why it's actually really, it can be beneficial. It's beneficial with stuff like, did I get all of my tools back into my container, and is that in the truck, and did all these things come back? So you can check off things that had to happen. I like to use visual triggers for all that kind of stuff to make sure, okay, I know where things go in my tool bag, and I know the tool bag went here, so I can instantly determine if that. So, but those aren't measurements, those are actually things. So there you go. Don't blame the people, blame the process. People don't fail. The process fails the person. Okay. So we talked about some of these studies that are out there and information. And if somebody wants to send me an email, I'll gladly send you all my slides. It's not a problem at all. So this
I
is
would
the
love to
details
have
of
these,
it.
Joe.
Yeah. So Joe at measureQuick, so it's all good. And here's the smart tools that are happening that's out there. Okay, here's your terawatts, which again, I tell you no lie, in less than 7 minutes, Jim calculated this thing. He's like, okay, hang on. Okay, here's what I got. That's 8.5
I'm not
trillion
surprised
gallons.
at all by that. Jim
Right.
never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah. So here's your app, and here's the backside of that, the MQ portal. Lots of great opportunities that go along with these two together. So appliance fixation, refrigerant charge, and we're ignoring airflow and static pressure. It's shocking the amount of people that are not doing static pressure. It's shocking. So
ABC.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's why measureQuick is set up to do that, is I think. So, and why isn't anybody doing duct testing? I'll leave it at that. Here's the other one. You're just another person with an opinion versus you can't manage if you don't measure. I know NCI claims that, but I think that Edward Demings actually had it before him. So, all right. We work with a variety of tools. All right. And here's my calculation. This is one of the big slides. You're like, wait, I don't know what he's talking about here. So again, if you try to add these up and they started changing on you, how fast could you keep up with that? So that's really the reality. This is what measureQuick is doing. Those aren't real numbers from your probes, but these are an example that all these probes can be changing dynamically. Indoor and outdoor temperatures are changing. The sun comes up or it goes away, or it's a cloudy moment for a month. Everything starts to change dynamically. And these are all of the gauges that you're getting. And you don't see them like this all at the same time, but you are able to scan through and see them and see whether they're not in the green or what they are. And that led us to what the heck is a smart probe. And these are just temperatures, whether it's a smart probe. Smart probes are only as smart as the app you use them with, because otherwise the app's not really telling you anything except the temperatures, right? So again, over there on the right side, that's where measureQuick thrives, is we're giving you a calculated target, an allowable range for everything you do here, not just the probes, but all the things that are being calculated from the probes. And that's an example of what you get. You tap on any one of the parts of the screen and you get this pop-up that's telling you if you're in range, out of range, and what's your current value. So I think that led us to here. So there we go. We did the 2-minute wrap up. We are telling you just-in-time education is what these are. So these are our diagnostics, which are also free. You can use our gauge screen for free. That changes it into the screenshot issue, but it's all free. You don't need probes in order to use our gauge screen. You can actually just enter the information, but I then wonder where you got it from, because you got to be measuring it somehow. So the best is to connect it with gauges. So all of these are telling you what they are. And you can click on any one of these and it would give you detailed information about what it is and potentially maybe how to repair it. Some of them still connect to HVAC school. So again, this whole process is something we do in our training, but again, it's giving you diagnostics and it's costs nothing. Here's our gauge screen. And I just gave you one simple snapshot. And you can scroll across. You can see in the bottom, there's multiple icons. Each one of them has 2 pages. All those gauges you saw earlier are all combined from these different pages. And any one you click on, it's going to give you details as to about whether or not and why that's in the green or not, or what they are. Even your saturation and evaporator gauges at the top, all those are giving you the the center of glide, which only we do. Again, it's about whether it's a blended refrigerant. So lots of information that's here, and all of this is free. You can open up the gauge screen anytime, enter the information, or have it connect directly to your probes and get your diagnostics from the upper right corner.
You guys, you're only paying if you need to have a report or you need to have a screenshot or you want to do the ACA certificate.
Yeah, I have a slide on that, so make sure I address that, and then we'll come back to that. So these are just some of the stuff we do. Air conditioning, obviously, heat pumps. We do heat pumps in heating mode, and we do gas furnaces and refrigeration. There's a whole series of stuff that we do that's way beyond. It's kind of, I describe it as we're kind of the Excel of the industry. So earlier you saw the Excel spreadsheet that's changing. That's about as dynamic as we are. If you could do anything in measureQuick, it's probably is being able to be done in there. And we're truly testing your system, and we're giving you the diagnostics that are happening all the time. So here brings us right into your question. Okay, so this is the premier features and you unlock a system. So let's talk about that. It's a system, not a job, not a house. So a system is an air handler or that which moves the hair. So it could be an air handler or furnace inside, and then outside is some outdoor unit. So it could be a heat pump or an air conditioner or whatever it is. It's an inside and outside unit. That is one system, and you unlock that system, and then it's unlocked for an entire year. Right? You can do a lot of measureQuick without unlocking it, but here's where it stops: is that you do not get to get your vital score. There's a score that comes along with that. You don't get to generate any reports or multiple reports or endless reports. You don't get to benchmark your system. You don't get to stream your data to somebody else back at your company or to another person. And a few other features that are all built into that. So it is unlimited photo documentation. We keep everything you do forever. The question is, you only have access to it for free for the 1 year. So you unlock it, and I got 1 year to do whatever I want with that data, that job, come back and forth as much as you want, just for $5, right? So when you realize the amount of effort you're putting into here and what you're paying for so many other things, $5 is nothing compared to what you're trying to get out of it, because we're capturing all your data, we're keeping it all, you're generating reports, I'm getting the score, and I'm able to come back to this system a month later, a day later. So if you installed something in February, you're clearly can come back in the spring and do an analysis, and come back in the fall and do an analysis. You have 1 year to go back to this system as much as you like. Anybody in your company can go back to this system as much as they like. So it's not specific to technician. It is specific to company. So no other company can tell that you're here or what you're doing. This is really where our basis is. So we let you do a lot of stuff for free. But if you really want to keep it, save all your photos, do any of that kind of stuff, then you actually have the pay for the features. $5, 5 qubits. The reason it's qubits is so you don't want to give 30% to Google or Apple. They take 30% off the top. So we have our own system of payment that we do. Hopefully that answered your question. So here's your number one thing that you get is you get a score. So we score your system as soon as you've unlocked it. We're able to score it. In fact, as soon as about 10 minutes, we can tell your system is stable. We got enough readings. We can start giving you a score. Even if you're missing readings, we're going to let you know that something's missing and do that. So you do need all 9 probes to do many of the things we do in measureQuick. So in order to get a score and get vitals and stream and do benchmarking, we're looking for all 9 probes. So we don't want people to indirectly cheat the client. It's just really what it is. So get everything you need to in here, and then we can give you all the data you're looking for. So this is an easy to read report. It was designed for consumers and designed for technicians to show their client and what's there. If you don't have 100, then we're able to tell you what it is you might be missing right there and on some of the other pages. So at the top in the middle, you get a score breakdown, and that the top one is these 3 pages is our quick vital score, which you get as part of your, if you do a service in the middle of the service, we're like, hey, stop now and check in and see what's going on. And then when you're done, you get a full pro report. So we're trying to make sure you have all the information you need to gain their trust, show them what you can have, use this as a sample report if you're going to go do a sales meeting with them. And here's what's pretty amazing. These are the details that you get for each one of your jobs. This is part of the full report. I can see where all of my measurements are, where they came from, and what probe they were connected to, or they were actually said manual entry should say calculated. So everything I could see what's going on. So I know if my technicians are actually using their probes or using those things. And there's also trend indicators that actually show up on these reports. The last one is one of the things, the other one we'll talk about is benchmarking, right? So benchmarking is when you have, especially for an install, it's really the number one time you want to benchmark is you've got this system honed, it's tuned in, you got everything running, everything's looking great. I can see my score, I can see my readings, everything is good. And then there's a location for benchmark. And once you benchmark that system, we are now capturing a variety of those measurements from airflow to superheat, subcooling, your total static, all those things become the personality for that unit. So every time you come back, I can see where my benchmark was and determine if I'm still operating within that benchmark. But it allows you to do something else that's well more valuable. So these are just some slides on benchmarking, okay? But in general, you get to do this. You get to do a non-invasive test, meaning that I can confirm if the system was benchmarked because I can actually see my indicators at the top here. When they're tight like that, that's a sign of a benchmark. So I can go back and do non-invasive, meaning I'm not going to connect my refrigerant probes and do that. I'm just going to connect my temperature probes on the line set. So here you can see in the middle here that I've got superheat and subcooling. Those are just estimated calculations based upon the temperatures I'm getting from my clamps, right? But I'm getting everything else. I'm still doing static. I'm still doing return and supply air. I'm doing everything else except those two probes are not connected to the refrigerant line. And that allows me to maybe have somebody who's newer go out and do an evaluation or confirm it's still operating, or a maintenance visit. I can actually check my charge and everything is on there without jeopardizing the charge getting lost or somebody burning their fingers, whatever that is. And you can see all those results showing up in our performance calculations that are part of the process. So this is something that I think is a game changer for how we can work with new people in the industry, that after the install, I can now start sending somebody out and getting valuable information. The other one, which I don't think is actually really being used as much as it could be. In fact, if you are listening to me tonight, I encourage you and challenge you to move to your next level of your career. And that is that people who can actually do diagnostics remotely, that are able to actually see their information, see what's actually happening on the gauge screen, the data, ask a few intelligent questions, see the conditions that measureQuick is giving you. You can scroll separately from your technician, is the future of where I think technicians are going to go. We've had many people, I know if you're familiar with Gettle out of Arizona and Vegas, every single install, you must stream your data back to somebody back at the office, and they evaluate what you've got and say, hey, great job, you can now pack up and go. Or they're asking you, why do you have an 80? That's not right. Something's not right here. We need to fix that. And I see people streaming late at night all the time. We see everybody streams. Sometimes it's 8, 9 o'clock and somebody's still trying to finish up an install and they're streaming and somebody's confirming it. They also do it for some of their support things. If you've been at a job for an hour, they're going to be like, hey, let's get on the stream. Let's see what's going on. What do we need to get you? So it's using your some of your best people and company-wide process to help every single technician. Obviously, we are all smarter than one individual, so it's definitely the future. So if you want to stop getting in attics, crawl spaces, or talk to clients or deal with that kind of stuff, you want to sit at a desk and help many other technicians in your company. We think this is another level where all this is going to come into play, especially with maybe some of the funding sources that are out there, that you can have stuff verified by a third-party process. So anyway, you're familiar with it. We gladly reach out to me and I can talk to you about how to do this and what it is. This is part of the premier features. You got to unlock the job in order to do that. Whoever's on the receiving side does not have to. So there are people out there in measureQuick that stream to each other. They help each other and nobody knows it. Their company doesn't know that. So the job's unlocked and they're like, hey, Chris, can you get on the line? Tell me out here. So we know that those are actually happening. So we talked about the ACA process a minute ago, and my little, somehow my design icon just ran away, but the ACA VSP is something we did. So this is actually the QI5, and it's called Verified System Performance. You need to do all of measureQuick that it has, but you need to enter a variety of criteria in our cloud services that actually determine the designs. You got to do your design. There's lots of in design that we don't really keep track of. I don't really care about your walls or that kind of stuff because we're not confirming that in the field. But I do need to know what were your design pressures and criteria and flow. all that goes actually out to the technician. And then they can actually confirm it in measureQuick, and it'll tell us, it'll pop up, this is not the system that was designed. Please confirm with your office, because right now there's a problem. It does require a duct leakage test. It does require airflow measurements, and you could use a variety of sources for that. It does require system balancing if the system was altered in any way, like adding a duct or removing a duct, or if it's a new system. So this is where we think the industry needs to go in order to do really the highest level of install and confirming performance. So I just can't find many people that are doing duct testing. So this whole thing is kind of really struggling for people that can do a duct test. Now, there are other people that can support you by doing duct tests. A lot of states have a DET or an IDL certified person that does that all day long, or a HERS rater. But in general, that's a real challenge to get people to complete this because of duct testing. So this was something we did a while ago, like, hey, prove it. And I adjusted the slide. All right. So congratulations. This is now out and running, and you obtained your certificate. The difference between the VSP, which I showed and actually had additional testing, duct testing and airflow, is there's another one that's just called VEO, verified system operation. Okay. Verified equipment operation. You can use this basic measureQuick. You start this flow in measureQuick, and it says, okay, you pick this path as your workflow, and then I can do a verified equipment operation. And right there, I get a certificate. Currently, this is free. Soon there will be a charge to do this and get this certificate, but right now these are free. I encourage you to take advantage of them while you can, because you actually start this workflow. You just do regular measureQuick. You need to get an A, and a variety of our subsystem reviews are all passing. Everything is great. Way to go. You get an extra certificate that stands you out from others that are trying to show what they're doing, and you have now proved it. We calculate appropriate SEER, EER. There's a variety of stuff that we do. We can capture electrical directly. You can manually enter it, but we're going to ding you for it. We're like, well, I can't really tell you that those are actually accurate or not. So one of the things we just did recently, when I came on board, I'm like, Jim, your app sucks. It's too hard to use. People aren't getting it. People are downloading, they're not using it. So let's come up with a way to help people flow through the app. So we came up with guided workflows. They've been out since last fall, but the winter is not our time. So we're hoping that people catch on to these. So if you just want gauge stuff, you've got that. That's always there. But if you really want to do the whole process or a company-wide assessment, and you want to confirm that everybody's doing the same thing, standardization happens not just with standards, but it's actually with the company. Does your whole company have a single process by which you're all trying to follow, and a standardization by which you all do the same stuff the same way? So I can confirm that when Jeff goes out, when Karen goes out, or Chris goes out, whoever they are, I know that what's going to happen at the end is always the same. And that's so uncommon. Even in measureQuick, there's things you need to do to make sure you're following the same process in terms of pictures you want to do, or a variety of stuff. So if you follow our process, it's going to get you there pretty close. So the gauge screen is always part of that. And now we have this new step-by-step workflow that walks you through literally each one of the steps. You step on it, tap on it, tells you what to do next. And to do that, it's even got little pictures on where to put the probes, and reminds you to zero the manometers and filter information. And there's a variety of stuff you need and some stuff you don't need, but we are outline what is really required for this. So we think this is going to change what's going to happen with all of the allotted money in terms of out there. So I need to know that this was installed correctly, and you need to prove it in somehow. So this is a step-by-step method. This is kind of what it looks like. These are all in the center. There is your projects that we have that are all guided workflows. Over on the left is one of the pages, so the last page. And then you get pop-outs as it's showing you where to put your manometers. It's reminding you to disconnect the unit before you do certain things. So we want the power off, so you're going to work in a safe environment. And then it reminds you to put the power back on and move to the next step. And it is an ABC method, which you mentioned, which is indoor first, and then outdoor. So it's a real specific methodology by which we're trying to promote. So here's one that actually goes along with why you should use measureQuick if you're a technician. Okay, so this is from a company out of New York. Clearly, some of their numbers you'll be like, oh, they're making good money in New York. So in 2021, no measureQuick, all right. And then in 2022, they started a CRM, and the person had to use a tablet and learned on his own. Like, I'm going to use measureQuick. Let's see what this thing does. He's an older person who struggled with an iPad, but clearly he got through it. And his sales increased 60% from 2021 to 2022. And most of that was from the extra options down below. So we are the calculator for a technician to figure out what it is that I'm missing, that I'm not seeing. And all those diagnostics will pop up if you always install the 9 probes. He always puts 9 probes in. There's a problem with the thermostat. He puts all 9 probes out and wants to make sure there's nothing else. It's an airflow problem or refrigerant problem. I replace your batteries, I reset your thermostat. All is good, but now let's check your system. And his numbers went up since then. So I saw him at the symposium in January in Florida, and he says, "Oh, my numbers have increased since 2022." This is just what it does for a technician and what it does for a company. So there is a motivation that's here. Many of you are familiar with this. I have some humorous slides that go along with the concept of, you've all seen is it a 1 ton, 2 ton, 3 ton, whatever it is, 5 ton. So the reality is that we still are using these. People still look at the house and decide what size it should be, not acknowledging the walls, the orientation, what's in the attic or crawl space. None of that stuff is really still being part of the industry. It's really kind of sad. Automobile industry stepped up, and those technicians, those people who are servicing your autos, they understand that technology is the future of their job and the future of making sure that people come back to see them. You're probably familiar with this, but it does say made in Colorado below that beer. And you have to keep your hand calibrated every night. Usually that's a 6-pack every night if you're going to use this method. So you got to make sure you stay on top of your calibration. Make sure your hand is well calibrated. The napkin math is still there. People are like, yeah, I can kind of do that. But there are amazing new apps and processes by which, from CoolCalc, which is okay. Conduit is actually going to revolutionize how we do manual J's.
Quick model.
Yeah, quick model. Thank you. You knew I was searching for that. Well done. So all those things. In fact, this illustration actually comes from Quick Model. This actually is a really good design. I just made fun of it as the concept, but Russ King gave me permission to use that. So yeah. So let's talk about instrumentation real quick, and I kind of move through some of this stuff kind of quickly. So if you went to see your doctor and he was using that stethoscope down there on the right, you'd be wondering, is this person really going to get me the best diagnostics that I need for my heart? Is he able to listen to murmurs or whatever's going on? And it has evolved, but now there's actually technology built into that. But a really good physician or nurse doesn't use the special little thing on their stethoscope. They just can listen well and focus on what that is. To me, this stethoscope issue is related to something that looks more like this. Okay. These are not where the industry should be headed. This is not our future. They have a purpose, but this is not really the best thing that we need to be using in terms of making sure that heat pumps and a variety of critically charged systems or best charged systems or can't adapt to some of the mini split heat pumps don't really have the ability to keep letting somebody come out every year, twice a year and throw the gauges on. So all of these things are impacting our industry. I calculated how much refrigerant is left in a 5-foot tube, the hoses, and based upon new installs, and it was 25,000 containers of 410A. If you extrapolate that into service, it's around 250 altogether, install and service, 280,000 containers, pink containers of 410A is lost just from the refrigerant that's left in your hoses. So if you want to do
GWP.
Yep, that's right. Holy GWP is right. But we're stuck on that stuff. And the other one is that they're really not that accurate, and they're hard to read. And there's a variety of stuff that say, please put the gauges down, step away from the unit, and go get some smart probes and actually do this correctly. There are a variety of adapters that are out there that allow you to do charging and stuff with these smart probes on them. So it's not a limitation except for your ability to go online and find out what it is you need to improve your process. So digital is just better. You don't really need to be calibrating these things at all for the most part. They come calibrated. They do much better with temperature and a variety of other stuff, and they're accurate out of the box. So it's a chorus of instruments. I got this from a buddy of mine who says, you know what? I think of all these instruments on the system as this chorus, and they're all singing to you. They're all trying to tell you great information about what you're trying to measure. So he had this earlier about what are the 9 probes. So in order to use measureQuick and get all of the premier features, you must have all 9. If you want to use our guided workflows, you got to have all 9, and they got to be on when you start the workflow. So we know later you're not like, oh, I'm missing something, or I never knew I had to buy an outdoor temperature probe. You need to know from the moment one. So these are it. And what you probably see is something more like this. The extra clamp is really defined as to use on a heat pump in heating mode. If you want to use a discharge line, more power to you, but it's kind of a pain to do that. But this is your basics for what you're going to need for a variety of stuff. So if you want to go back and add that, you can, and there's a time to do it. Most of our workflows, install requires electrical, service does not. Your score is not based upon any electrical readings. You cannot tweak the amperage or tweak the voltage. So we capture them. We can tell you a lot about the information with the electrical, but the reality is that it's not a requirement. So this is really the probes you must have. And there's a variety of manufacturers. I don't want to just think that I'm only promoting field piece. So we have Yellow Jacket, and we also have a JB's on the market now. They've got some stuff that have little readouts on their gauges. So Testo's been around forever. Yeah, that's right. So, but real quick, here's what we're doing with these probes. Okay, so inside, I got my return air. It just goes at the nearest return in the system, right? There are some debates about the return air, but in general, if you got a return, I prefer that it's upstairs and not in the basement. But in general, just pick a spot and know that's your process, and those are the readings you're going to get. All right. It is a supply air that you got to make sure is in the closest register in the system, not in the actual appliance. It's in the register in the system. And the supply must be inside the register, because you get entrainment, little air that's moving across the front of that grill as air comes out. So you got to make sure that you're actually inside the grill in order to get the best measurement. I see people doing all the time where they just kind of like put it around or put it somewhere in the room. And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing, because you're not getting a really good temperature split. We calculate on a really accurate level what your SCFM is when you actually install these probes correctly. And tell us a little bit about your duct system. There is a difference between putting your static pressure probes in a furnace or air handler. I have taught hundreds of contractors, and I stopped asking them to demonstrate where they go, because so far I quit early because I'm like, I'm going to embarrass more people. I stopped doing it. They would come up and they would just put them randomly where they thought they went. And then I explained to them that's not where they go. And later they'd be like, I've been doing this 22 years, Joe. Never knew where they went. So outside is pretty straightforward in terms of your clamps, but the one that is specific is your outdoor air temperature. That needs to be out of the sun, number one, and out of the air that's flowing off the top of the unit. So if you have that kind of criteria, then everything is good. Discharge line is optional. And here's your breakdown of what you're looking for. By the way, I do all the illustrations for measureQuick. Here you go. 85% of the reason for failure are deficiencies in the system and process rather than the employee. So again, you hopefully you at least took away, I need to Google Edward Stimmings and see the laundry list of stuff he's got. He's got a variety of books, everything out there. Some pretty cool YouTube videos also. I will go quickly with TrueFlow Grid. Many of you may be familiar with the TrueFlow Grid, but we think it's a major asset to measureQuick. You can use the TrueFlow Grid in measureQuick. You can add it. It's an add-on device, and then when you go to your airflow, it says, okay, open up the TrueFlow Grid app, and actually it will walk you through what that is and use that measurement in measureQuick. We have this behind the scenes checks and balance that if the information from measureQuick is more than 10% different from the TrueFlow Grid, we're like, hey, wait a minute, something's not right here. You should recheck your test or do that. The only thing I say is, I know the TEC people forever, we're all dear friends. The only challenge with the TrueFlow Grid is that it must be completely touching the bottom or the top or the sides of wherever you're trying to get your airflow. If you have any bit of gap, you're allowing air to come in that's not being measured. So all your airflow is now lower than what it should have been. But if you got a good seal around all the sides, and sometimes if you put the TrueFlow Grid horizontally in a 2-inch or 4-inch filter slot, it's just way too much air that's getting past that. So just make sure that when you look at it, you can see it is totally sealed on all the sides, and you're going to find out that your measurements are really very accurate and align pretty well with measureQuick. Pretty straightforward system. The holes you've already got for static, we're going to do a full pressure profile. So you are above the coil and before the filter. And the app is phenomenal. It guides you right through what it is you need to know and what you need to do next. So it's an impressive array of what that is. The people that are using this are no longer service technicians as much as they are sales folks. Several people that we work with in Ohio and around the country are like, oh yeah, no, I gave this to our salespeople because it's a no-brainer. It's a done deal. So the things that it's doing is telling me about my airflow now, and then they're working on this new conversion, which will tell me, oh, tell me about the next system you're going to install. It's basically fan law 2. It says, okay, let's extrapolate what we've got there. And then I can confirm what it is that if this next system will accommodate the system you have now. It works well for if the system is could be too tight. It doesn't really help you if the system is leaky and it's too big. So if it's too big, you're probably okay, but you have a lot of duct leakage that you didn't test. So again, great readouts, great printouts. It's a phenomenal resource in terms of actually confirming for your clients before you do an upgrade or an install as to what your system's going to be. Good. We're actually doing great on time. Okay, so you're welcome to take a screenshot. If not, if you just send me an email, Joe, remind me who you are, what you want. So it's all good. But we have some great videos about this. We have one just on the gauge screen, or adding your field piece probes, or the start screen and utilities. And we have one that's only on your the workflows and how to go through an install. I got one on servicing, but we haven't really edited yet. So, but my goal is to try and do more and more of these kind of videos to kind of guide you along and that kind of stuff. So to me, it's the industry does a phenomenal job of educating itself, as long as you're willing to get educated. So I'm really impressed by the people that are out there that are making amazing content and helping others and doing all this. And then what's shocking is the amount of people that don't even know who half of you are, or some of the influencers, or the videos that are out there, or the groups that get together. I'm like, if you're in it, get in it. It's your profession. Step up and be a part of it, or make room for somebody else, because that's really my frustration that happens with a lot of technicians. I'm like, this is not what you really want to do every day. So why do you do it? It's okay. But those of you that are doing it, I totally respect you and appreciate you. Many times I would say, I appreciate your service as though you are military, because you are not like any other trade, and you know that. But electricians, man, tools are small. They fit in my back pocket. Voltage, amperage is not changing. It's not like I go and go, oh, this panel is working on 233 volts or whatever. Your systems are completely dynamic. They're constantly changing. You have multiple variances, and then they come up with a new model, and you have to relearn it and figure out, how do I get my phone to connect to that so I can finish setting up this system. So I applaud your ability to stick with this industry, because it is by no means, I think it's probably easier to become a surgeon than some of the stuff you guys do as technicians. So well done. That's me. There's my email, measureQuick.com. We have a wealth of information that's out there. We are doing a webinar series that's intermittent, so you can find them out on measureQuick.com, or reach out to myself or Ben Reed, Ben at measureQuick, and we can give you a lot of that information. So, all right, what kind of questions we got? Because I had to kind of put that aside and move through that.
Absolutely. So first of all, you guys, I just want to touch on a couple of things that Joe said, because he's absolutely right about TrueFlow. I was able to go out to TEC and train with them, with Steve and Chris, and I was able to completely transform my HVAC business just by being able to test their airflow correctly. So definitely look into that if you haven't. And then we didn't have a ton of questions, because every time somebody asked a question, you answered it in your slides, which is awesome. We love when that happens. But we did have Tessa Sweeney would like to know, how long are we supposed to be testing for when we hook up to measureQuick, if we're just doing a system diagnostic test?
Yeah, so I usually get the reverse. Yeah, I get. Thanks for the question. I usually get the reverse is, how much longer is measureQuick going to take? All right, that's a common question I get. So I'm like, well, what are you doing now? If you just put your hand up to find out if the temperature is kind of hot or cold, and you leave, measureQuick will take longer. Okay, so that's kind of the concept. It's like, if you're going to do a crappy job, it will take longer, right? So
the better job you do,
yeah. So I ask people, well, what are you doing now to measure these things? What are you doing instead of these 9 probes? What are you using to measure it? So, and if you're writing it down, that takes longer to me. Or if you're trying to, move temperature probes around, that takes longer. So in general, I only think it only takes a few minutes to increase your time by getting all this information, and you're done, you're captured. To go back to the same job, your whole profile and everything is there. But he's asking about how long does it need to run. So steady state, as we all know, is around 10 minutes. Okay. But if we can determine that your system is stable. Right? We have algorithms in the background that are running. So if it's not stable, we'll let you know in your diagnostic system is not stable yet. You cannot benchmark until your system is stable. But you may find that after 7 minutes, it's stable, and I can actually get a score and start making decisions. I encourage you to go at least 10, sometimes 15 minutes, because as we all know, the longer that thing kind of winds in, it gets comfortable, you'll find out that your score gets better, your numbers come into line, and the weird anomalies just kind of fade away. So a little longer is always better. So 5 minutes is not enough time.
No. And the answer is, you guys, measureQuick will tell you. That's how long you need to run it for. Like Joe was saying, it tells you, I use measureQuick every day in my life. It saves my life all the time. It makes my troubleshooting go so much faster. And that's because I give it the time it needs to work, and I use the tools that are meant to be used with it. If you guys have those 9 probes, if you have measureQuick set up and you've taught yourself, you've gone through these trainings and these webinars to teach yourself, Jim and measureQuick have put out so many, it's not even funny. YouTube alone is enough. We have stuff on the HVHX channel that were donated to us. So go ahead and make sure that you're using what's given to you so that your process specifically is streamlined, and that will make things a lot faster as well.
Okay, I will reach out of my comfort zone. Go ahead.
I am looking for, there's one more question. Hi from Australia. How about domestic refrigeration? measureQuick works for that, or is it overkill?
No, it does work well for anything you're doing as part of this industry. Jim has probably figured out a process for you and wants to do that for you. So, but at that point, you're way beyond my scope, and you're really mostly dealing with Jimmy, our main tech support person, can kind of help with that. But in general, some of that is a direct contact with Jim. Jim is fully giving. Jim at measureQuick.com. So there you go. You have his email, Jim at measureQuick.com. Sometimes if you include me, I can see the response, so I could also learn what you asked. And if not, I can find out what happened and he didn't respond. So he just recovered from cancer. So some days he's like, forget it. I'm not, I'm not doing it. So that's right. But in general, he's actually very, does all that stuff kind of early in the morning before he gets distracted. So if you want to learn more about that, I'm sure we have some YouTube stuff. Check on YouTube first. And then be like, hey, Jim, I want to learn more about refrigerant. And he will give you a wealth of information. And if need to, depending on your time change, even talk to you on the phone if you needed to.
Yeah, he loves to give information, you guys. He came on the day that he finished his chemo treatments. He came on Misfits of HVAC when I didn't even ask him to. So, I mean, Jim is the most giving guy I probably have ever met. Reach out to him if you need to. And then somebody asked about commercial. It does work for commercial, you guys. It's just kind of a different process. If you want to talk about that, Joe.
Yeah, we work on the smaller systems. A lot of people use it on large systems, but at that point, you are using measureQuick as a tool, right? That's one of our challenges, was that Jim thought that measureQuick was just like the probes. Hey, it's a tool. Use it however you want. And I'm like, no, Jim, it's not like that. People, it's an app. They're expecting you to tell them what to do next. And it's like, and of course, we did change all that. But if you understand how the process works and what the measurements are, you can work it with a lot of different systems that are beyond our scope. We did try to do commercial, but there just wasn't enough people doing it. Yeah,
it takes a lot of feedback, I'm sure.
Okay, so I brought up my screen. I want to show you guys something. So real quick. So this is my live measureQuick app. This is my iPad right next to me. So many of you are familiar with this. If not, your chart screen may look different. Again, hey, I got videos on that. All right. But one of the things I want to show you, this is new, is we have this new start project concept. Okay. Very, very familiar. These are at the top of these guided workflows that actually give you step-by-step information. I got rid of all of the extra options because the guided workflows look a lot like the regular workflows. So it's kind of confusing, but the top is always your guided workflows. But if you scroll all the way to the bottom, this is this new thing we got here. It's built-in training. All right.
Yes.
This is actually an install workflow, and soon there will be a service workflow. And if you just tap on it, it will ask you, I always tell you, just go ahead and create a new site no matter what your options are. And it'll walk you through the entire process without any probes, without any money, without anything. It's just a matter of understanding how measureQuick works. So if your goal is to get used to the stuff on the left side, get used to pressing these buttons, because the faster you do this, then you'll realize that I can actually focus on what's on the other side. Now I can start focusing on my measurements. When I don't have to worry about what do I do next, now you go back to being a technician. So that's really my goal, is again, go all the way to the beginning and start a project all the way to, it's always at the bottom. And it's called testing. And that'll lead you right through everything we're doing here. Notice I always have information in my gauge screen because it will just pre-populate it. So you can play with real data in real time and learn measureQuick without any probes or any requirements.
Which is awesome. Most companies do not offer this stuff, guys. This is a measureQuick exclusive kind of deal. Make sure you're using it. And again, like Joe said, if you're going through the guided workflows and you don't skip anything, you can't mess up. You have to physically do the thing before to do the next thing. So you guys will get it.
Yep, it's pretty straightforward. And we have stuff built in, like right here on my deploy your probes, right? There's a little picture right there. It says, okay, that's where you put your probes. That's what you do. Right. So we try to give people the information. In fact, I have a bunch more illustrations I need to do about electrical and some other stuff. So those all come in time.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is amazing. You guys, if you're not using measureQuick, you should be using measureQuick. There is no excuse to be using, and we talk about this when we have training every other Tuesday here, you guys. I'm always showing you guys the same probes, the same kits. I'm showing you the same tools that I'm using because they work with measureQuick and because I need measureQuick to get through my job. And again, with those ACA certificates too, I kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit too, Joe, because these are new, you guys, but I've been doing extensive research and using these myself. And let me tell you, the amount of value you can build with a customer because you have this ACA certified, certificate. So you show the customer this when you leave after you've done the install. This prevents the customer from coming back at you and saying, hey, it's not working now. It's something you did when you were here, because we know for a fact that the system vitals were working perfectly when we left. On top of that, the customer can't see, we talk about this all the time, they can't see what you did within the system and they don't know what you know. So the best thing that you can give them is a printout or, a screenshot of a way for them to see what you've done within their system, because that adds value to your work. So definitely, if you're looking for a way to add value, if you're a new business owner, anything like that, make sure that you're doing those ACA certificates as well.
Yeah, and right now they are free. They will not be free for long, but
Right.
their goals are trying to get status out there and trying to get more people wanting to do that. So yeah, it's definitely something you want to be using it while you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the other one that if you're willing to do the duct testing side of that and that kind of stuff,
Yes.
reach out, because I will help fund your cause, because I need more contractors that are just willing to do it right and do all those steps. So if that's your goal, then let me know, because this part's free and I'll even help fund some of your measureQuick costs, because it's only costs $5. It's the same price right now. But please, let's figure we can't figure out how to shift the industry into acknowledging what they really have that's in-house already.
I actually didn't know you could do that with measureQuick. I do duct testing all the time. I'm one of the only contractors in my area of my state that does it at all, and that does TrueFlow. And I didn't even know that measureQuick was looking for that. So I will
So
definitely
yeah,
reach out
just to
to you guys.
clarify that, it's a great question. Let me clarify. So we will come back probably in the fall and connect with either a Retrotech or TEC gauges and do a duct test or get their data. But right now, you actually just do your duct test and then enter the information. So there's still a way to be a little vague. I really want to capture it all directly, but any information is better than no information. And so far,
for sure,
people aren't cheating it. They're like, oh yeah, I did a duct test, and they just put in some information. It tells you if you pass or fail, so they could change it. So
well, so few of us do duct testing. I think that's probably why people aren't cheating it so much.
Yes, or they don't have a duct tester to even think that they could cheat. So I don't know what my numbers should be.
Not everybody's hanging out with a duct blaster like I am.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Do you do a blower door test also? Do you do blower door?
I do. Yeah, yep.
Fantastic.
I have a super good relationship with Steve at TEC, and he's just amazing, and Retrotech as well. So
yeah.
But yeah, I'm one of the only contractors I'm in the Lakes region of Maine, and we were actually called out by somebody in northern Maine because they didn't have anyone in their region at all doing blower door testing. So it's been great for my career. I'll say that. But it's also better because I'm an engineer. I do design, I do manual JSD, that kind of stuff. And it's been helpful with that as well.
Yeah, you can't do a manual J without a real infiltration numbers. Right. So yeah.
Unless you're just clicking like no on the blower door box.
But even still, but it's going to ask you like, oh, do you think your home's tight or leaky or semi-leaky? And you're like, oh no, it's super tight. I'm like, that is a 0.0 air changes per hour. That is a passive house tightness. And people are like, yeah, I'm sure it is. And no, they're failing. So
yeah. Oh, especially in Maine, it's like we might as well be passive houses. All right. I think that is, there is one more question from Dan Knudsen. Is there going to be a replay? I got stuck at work late. Yes, every single one of these is recorded, you guys. These are put right into the SkillCat app. If you click on that communities tab, you'll see it right at the top. All of the trainings that I have done with you guys before now and all of the webinars with other people like measureQuick are all on there.
Yeah, Brian Feeney's coming in, I think next week or something too.
Yes, I thought he was tonight.
Oh, that's why you were here. I see.
Okay. I'm here every Tuesday, but I was super happy to see Joe. I haven't gotten to work with Joe yet, you guys. So it's pretty great. I've worked with Brian. I've worked with Ben. I've worked with Jim countless times, but not Joe. So it's great. All right, you guys, if you have any more questions for Joe, you can email them to him at joe@measurequick.com, or you can post them in the SkillCat Tech Den. We can get them over to Joe. We're going to have lots of these little measureQuick webinars. So keep on it. Download the app if you haven't already. If you have any questions, let us know.